Welcome to the Fear and Greed Afternoon Report for Thursday, the 28th of April 2022. I'm Sean Aylmer. Every afternoon we bring you the 5 news items that happened today that you need to know about. Story number 1, the S&P ASX 200 finished the day up 1.3% to 7,357 points. A very strong session after a couple of shockers, which had wiped more than 5% off the bourse. The materials sector led the way. The country's largest company, BHP, jumped 4.3%. When that happens, the ASX rises. Fortescue Metals rose 8% after it said it was on track for record exports this financial year, and Rio Tinto was up 3.5%. Diversified miners South32 and ASX Limited were both up more than 3%, while CSL and Macquarie Group jumped more than 1%. The healthcare and tech stocks were among the worst performers, but the best of the day was AMP. More of that shortly. Next was copper and gold producer Sandfire Resources, which rose 11% after delivering an upbeat production forecast. Silver Lake Resources was the worst on the day, down 6.5% after initially falling 11%, saying cost pressures are hitting the bottom line. Story number 2, inflation and the economic outlook is dominating the economic and political agenda at the moment. Coles boss Stephen Kane today warned that prices had risen and would keep rising. A bunch of miners, including Fortescue Metals, came out and said labour shortages and costs were a problem. Prime Minister Scott Morrison said inflation was a global challenge, not an Australian issue. That's after Consumer Price Index data on Wednesday showed the biggest jump in more than 20 years. The Labor opposition said the government wasn't doing enough to alleviate cost of living pressures, and more economists came out to say the Reserve Bank will lift the official cash rate next week. There's not much good news in any of that. Story number 3, AMP has sold off another part of its business, pushing its share price up 13%. It sold its international infrastructure business, and that follows the sale yesterday of the infrastructure equity and real estate funds management business. It means that AMP's funds management arm, which used to be known as AMP Capital, has now been sold off for a total consideration of at least $2 billion. AMP share price is now at its highest level since November last year. Story number 4, a couple of once hot retail stocks are struggling. Adore Beauty said March quarter revenue rose 9% and active customers jumped to 880,000. It triggered a slight rise in its share price, but Adore has had a hard time of it since listing in late 2020. Since then, its share price has gone from close to $7 to today's close of $1.68. And the other one worth a mention is luxury goods retailer Cettire. It was a very hot stock after it listed in December 2020, up more than 800% in less than a year, but the end of the pandemic hasn't been kind. Today, it said revenues were up sharply in the March quarter, but that couldn't prevent a 10% slide. Its share price is now heading back to where it started nearly 17 months ago. And story number 5, the US economy may well have contracted over the first 3 months of the year. With official growth figures due for release tomorrow morning, Australian time, some economists are suggesting it could have gone backwards. That would put the US Federal Reserve in the difficult position of lifting interest rates sharply while the economy is contracting. It's not as bad as it sounds. If the world's biggest economy did go backwards, it's probably because of a big fall in net exports during the 3 months, and that's likely to revert. Meanwhile, on Wall Street this morning, the major indices ended fairly flat. One stock that did well was Meta, parent of Facebook, after more users were added to the social network site than expected during the 3 months to March. And after hours trading, shares were up 15%. That's it for the afternoon report for Thursday, the 28th of April 2022. Don't forget to hit follow on the podcast and find Fear and Greed on LinkedIn, Twitter and Facebook. Join Adam Lang and I tomorrow morning for the Friday Fast 5 by Fear and Greed. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your evening.